Chapter 10. I was just getting ready to leave for school the next day when the phone rang. Papa had already left and Mama was pulling out of the driveway. She likes to get to Uncle's shop early to help unpack the fresh fish and set it out in the display cases. Uncle says Mama's an artist, that she makes the fish look twice as fresh as it really is, and so beautiful that people enjoy looking as much as buying. "Hideo?" I asked, immediately sensing something urgent in his voice. "Is anything wrong?" "It's Sue," he said. "She's not feeling right, kind of nauseous and crampy. Says it's probably the lobster bisque we ate out last night, but I had it too and it didn't bother me. I'm worried. If it weren't for this meeting in San Francisco today, I'd stay home." "What about her mother?" "I'd call, but she's a Class A worrier, and Sue said she'd never forgive me if I did. I wanted to phone the doctor, but she says I'm making too much of it." "Do you want me to look in on her after school?" "Oh, would you, Amy? I'd feel so much better knowing you're with her. When can you get there?" "Wednesdays I tutored Bettina, but I didn't tell Hideo that. I just phone and change the date. I'll be there by 3 and stay until you get home, so don't worry. She'll be fine. It's probably nothing." Preoccupied, I went off to school hoping Sue wasn't going to lose the baby. A slight drizzle turned into a steady rain, and I ran the last block holding my zippered notebook over my head. Just as I reached the school steps, Brian stopped me. He seemed to be waiting just for me. Or was I being paranoid? "Hello, Amy," he greeted. "Typical of an orange, being late. Let's see your journal." "Now?" "Now. Your journal, please." "Can I just get out of the rain?" "You'll stand here until I see that journal." Why was he doing this? Because I wouldn't go out with him? Other students rushed by, barely noticing, intent on getting under cover. There was nothing to do except give him the journal as fast as possible so I could be done with it and get into school. I shivered as the rain wet through my sweater, but unzipped my notebook, pulled out the journal, and handed it to him. Waiting there, notebook on head, getting wetter by the minute from the slanting rain, I hated him, and hated the way he made me feel. Stupid and unimportant and without value. I tried to stand proudly as if I didn't care, thinking that if he'd offered to share his umbrella at that moment, I'd refuse. At last, after what seemed minutes, during which he browsed slowly through the pages of my journal, he returned it to me and waved me on. "Thanks, Brian," I said coldly. "You're a real sport."
"Thought you needed a lesson, Amy. Your fellow Blues are really pissed off about you. They're out to get you for betraying them, so watch it."
Betraying them? I troubled over Brian's words all the way to my first class, where I arrived cold, wet, and late. When I fell into my seat, someone poked me in the shoulder. "Oranges sit in the back," Carol said, a gleam of satisfaction in her eyes, behind their superiors. "Oh, for goodness sakes," I exclaimed. "That's ridiculous." "I'm just going by the rules," she said, "the way you should have." "Carol? Amy?" The teacher called out, so the whole class turned to look at us. Seething, but not wanting to make a scene, I picked up my books and turned my back on Carol and took another seat. Being an orange seemed such a hassle, having to bow so much, be on guard all the time, take insults from everyone, and pretend it didn't hurt. I felt so unbalanced by it all that I couldn't settle down to concentrate. We'd been assigned to read Down These Mean Streets, a book by Piri Tomas about being Puerto Rican. So that's what we talked about in Otera's class that day. The book was about Tomas's life in the streets, stealing and dealing drugs. He looked black, and when his family moved to a mostly white neighborhood, he didn't fit in. Just like when you change colors in the color game, I thought, glancing down at my blue and orange color bands. Pretty soon the Latinos and other minorities in the class got to talking, telling the kinds of things you only tell really good friends. They almost seemed to forget where they were or who was listening. "My grandfather crossed the border when he was only 12, Raoul said. "He came from such poor people they couldn't afford to feed him. He worked as a farm laborer most of his life, 14 hours a day, and sent money home." "My father was a Vietnam hero," Gwen said. "But when he got out of the service, he couldn't get a job because he was black." It's not just color that makes it so hard, Juan added. It's being poor. When you have very little money, you can't afford decent housing, so you live where it's crowded and noisy, where crime and drugs are a way of life because it's the only way to get money. Your kids don't eat well, so they're sick more often, and doctors cost. Poverty is what separates people, maybe even more than color. It's a vicious circle, a catch-22, Otero said. If color prevents you from getting work because you're labeled inferior, you lose your self-respect and ambition. You can't support a family, and, feeling guilty, may leave them. The family suffers. The children see how their parents couldn't make it because of color, so maybe they don't even try. But things are changing. They appear to be getting better. Education is still the ladder to economic success. I don't think we arrived at any real conclusions, but when the bell rang, I felt a closeness among the students that hadn't been there before. I guess it was from opening up to each other. Maybe it wouldn't last, but at least it was a beginning. I phoned Mrs. Tarcher right after class, a lump of fear settling in my stomach. Adam waited nearby, talking with friends. Somehow his mother always made me feel awkward without reason, guilty without cause. "Mrs. Tarcher?" I asked, in a voice not at all mine. "Yes?" "This is Amy. Amy Sumoto?" "Yes? What is it, Amy?" I told her about Sue, and how I'd make up Bettina's lesson Saturday if it would be convenient. "This is very short notice," Adam's mother said. "If I'd known before Bettina left for school, I'd have made other arrangements." "I didn't want to phone too early," I explained, "for fear of waking you. I'm sorry." "I'm not sure about Saturday," she said, ignoring my apology. "I'll let you know." "All right. Goodbye." I hung up. She hadn't offered a word of sympathy about Sue. Not a word. How could Adam be so kind and warm and his mother so cold and unfeeling? Getting to the phone had taken some doing. In just one day of being an Orange, I'd discovered the secret to survival. Anonymity. If you walked briskly or smiled or made eye contact, you were sure to be stopped by a G4 or a higher color. So I did the opposite. Whenever I saw a G4 headed my way, I about-faced, or hid in a cluster of regular students, eyes averted. It never occurred to me until I did that. How many kids just blended into the background routinely in school? Adam drove me to Sue's place right after school. "We need to talk," I said. "But not now." We kissed quickly, then he drove off, already late for soccer practice. Hideo had said he'd leave the key under a flower pot so I wouldn't have to disturb Sue. I found the key and opened the door, calling out Sue's name so as not to scare her. "In here," she answered from the bedroom. She was in bed, hair tousled like a sleepy child's, and face unusually pale. She gave me a wan smile. I dropped my books on the floor and bent to kiss her. "Hi, how's it going? Want some tea?" No, nothing. Just sit down and keep me company." I sat on the bed facing her and took her hand. "Are you okay? Are the cramps gone?" She shook her head. "No, but let's not talk about that. Just talk to me." I told her about things at school, and about the plans we'd made for the rally. I told her about Adam, how we seemed to be edgy with each other, how I found myself holding back since I'd found out about his weekend party. She watched me, eyes glistening. But I felt she was someplace else, listening to some inner sounds, rather than to me. She seemed to need my presence and the monotone of my voice, so I talked on. I had about run out of things to say when Sue drew her hand away, turned her head, and began to cry. My heart lurched. Sue, what is it?" "Oh, Amy, I'm so scared," she sobbed. I waited for her to go on, afraid of what she'd say, but after a time she turned back to me, eyes wet and red. "I've been hemorrhaging." "Oh, no." "We want this baby so much. It means so much to us, to everything." I know, I crooned. "Listen, I'll call the doctor." She shook her head. "I phoned already. The only thing I can do is stay in bed and rest. He wants to see me tomorrow. Maybe it will be all right. Sometimes it happens. What did I know about pregnancy? Yet it seemed the only hopeful thing to say. Should I call Hideo? He's in San Francisco. I jumped up. I'll phone Mama. Papa. My mind raced. Mama might be at the store, or on her way home. Papa might be anywhere. Sue's mother lived out of town, too far away to come quickly. Before I'd even left the room, Sue stopped me. Amy, no, please. Why, Sue? Why not? She started to cry then, really cry. Big, deep sobs with her hands over her eyes. I came back to the bed and put my arms around her, rocking her to me, back and forth. Everything depends on this baby, she mumbled into my shoulder. Everything. It's not just that we want it. It's so important to your parents. It's the only way they'll really accept me. I can't stand to see how it tears Hideo apart, this strangeness, since we married. He needs them, your parents, their acceptance and love. The baby makes all the difference. Oh, no, Sue, no. That's not true. Really. My parents love you. They just don't know how to show it. Give them time. They don't show emotion much, but how could they not love you? And I thought, oh, Mama, Papa, how could you hurt this sweet, good woman just because she's not Japanese? Mama and Papa arrived shortly before Hideo reached home. They came into the bedroom carrying flowers from our garden. For Sue's sake, I wished Mama would kiss her, or Papa would touch her arm, some gesture of love. But it was not their way. Mama almost immediately bustled into the kitchen to put the flowers in water and fix a special tea she said would help stop the bleeding. And Papa sat on a kitchen chair, hands in lap, looking awkward and miserable. I'm so sorry, Sue apologized, trying hard for cheerfulness. I really should get up and fix something. Mama shouldn't have to. Papa waved her back. No, daughter-in-law. Immediately he corrected himself. No, Sue. You must do what the doctor says. Rest flat in bed. We do not want anything to happen to your baby, our grandchild, or to you.